Nobody told you Canada set a trap. Trump spent a year trying to break Canadian manufacturing. Tariffs, layoffs, plant shutdowns. He made it hurt. And it did hurt. 23,000 auto workers lost their jobs in 1 year from one decision made in Washington. But here's what didn't make the news. While Trump was swinging, Ottawa was building something. A $10 billion financial firewall, and buried inside it, a legal mechanism that quietly flipped the pressure back onto the Americans. We're going to walk through exactly what happened, what it means for your job, your car payment, and your family's financial future. And we're going to show you the part that nobody, not CBC, not CTV, not Global, has properly explained to ordinary Canadians. This is the story of how Canada got punched, and punched back harder, and why the outcome of the next 90 days affects every single one of us. To understand what changed, you have to understand what we had. Before February 2025, the Canada-US auto relationship wasn't just trade. It was one machine. Parts crossed the border 7 times before a single truck rolled off the line. A transmission made in Windsor went to Michigan. An engine block from Ohio came back to Oshawa. A finished pickup truck drove to a dealer in Detroit. This wasn't globalization as an idea. This was a Tuesday. The CAMI plant in Ingersoll, Ontario built GM's BrightDrop electric delivery van. Ingersoll is a town of 13,000 people. The plant was its heartbeat. Workers there were making between $65,000 and $85,000 a year in unionized jobs. Good jobs. The kind you build a life around. And for years they were told, hang in there. The green transition is coming. Your plant is going to lead it. EV manufacturing in Ontario is the future. 125,000 Canadians work directly in the auto sector. The whole thing hummed. Canada built it. America bought it. Everyone made money. And then it stopped. February 2025. Trump signs an executive order. 25% tariffs on Canadian goods. Cars, auto parts, steel, aluminum, heavy-duty trucks, everything. His theory was simple. Make it painful enough. Canada will fold. Within weeks it looked like he was right. GM called the CAMI plant on a Tuesday in April 2025. All 1,200 workers don't come in. The plant is shutting down. These were $78,000 a year jobs. Gone in one phone call. Stellantis started cutting shifts in Windsor. A Canadian auto supplier called Narmco Group lost 70% of their business overnight when GM canceled its EV programs. 70%. Overnight. The Ontario manufacturing corridor started shaking. Windsor, Hamilton, Oshawa, Ingersoll, all of it bleeding at once. Trump was watching, and from where he sat, it was working. Then Ottawa moved. March 21, 2025. The Canadian government announced the Large Enterprise Tariff Loan Facility. $10 billion. No drama. No big press conference. Just a quiet financial backstop so that major Canadian companies could survive long enough to fight back. Then on April 14th and 15th, Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne announced Phase 2, a 6-month exemption from Canada's own counter-tariffs for manufacturers who relied on U.S. inputs. Automakers could import American-assembled vehicles into Canada without counter-tariffs, but only if they committed to maintaining Canadian production and Canadian investment. Stay in Canada, get the exemption, leave Canada, lose it. We'll come back to why that single condition changes everything. But first, let's talk about what this actually costs us. Personally, think about Ingersoll. When 1,200 workers lost their jobs in April 2025, that wasn't an economic statistic. That was the town. Those workers spent money at the grocery store, the hardware store, the coffee shop on the main street. That money stopped moving overnight. When the plant partially reopened in October 2025, 700 workers got called back, which means 500 people in Ingersoll are still at home right now, still waiting. They did nothing wrong. They showed up. They built vans, and they got caught between two governments playing chicken with their lives. Expand that across the country. 23,000 Canadian auto workers lost their jobs in 12 months. That's the entire population of Brockville, Ontario, wiped off the employment map. From one executive order, Ontario bore 79% of those losses. Now let's talk about your wallet. Even if you still have your job, even if you've never set foot near a factory, if you want to buy a truck right now, Maybe yours is done, maybe you need one for work. You're going to feel this. Trump's 25% tariff added $8,000 to the average pickup truck sticker price. A full-size SUV is up $9,000. An electric vehicle is up to $12,200 more than it was before this started. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce calculated what a full tariff war cost the average Canadian household. The number is $1,900 per person per year. In lost purchasing power, that's not one bill you can see. It's groceries costing a little more, wages not growing quite as fast, the renovation you keep putting off, and here's the one that doesn't get talked about enough. Think about a 54-year-old parts supplier worker in Windsor, 22 years on the job, good pension, benefits. When the EV programs got canceled after the tariffs hit, his plant lost its biggest contract. He's not on the assembly line, he just makes the parts. And right now he's trying to figure out if what he knows how to do is worth anything anymore. That's the trade war. Not the charts, not the GDP percentages. That guy. CBC will tell you Canada announced relief programs for businesses. Nobody is telling you that Canada built a trap, and the trap is for the Americans. Here's what the mainstream news missed. The automaker exemption that Champagne announced, the one that lets Ford, GM, and Stellantis import vehicles into Canada without counter tariffs, is conditional. The condition is maintaining Canadian production and Canadian investment. The moment any of those companies reduces its Canadian footprint, even slightly, the exemption is gone. And then they face full counter tariffs on vehicles coming from the US into Canada. Think about what Trump was trying to do. His play was make Canada painful enough that US companies eventually move production south, score a political win, bring jobs home. But Canada's response quietly reversed the financial incentive. If Ford or GM reduces Canadian operations, even to satisfy Trump, they pay more on both sides of the border. Canada made it cheaper to stay than to leave. Trump tried to pull investment south. Canada restructured the rules so that leaving Canada now costs more than staying. Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, said it out loud on an earnings call. 25% tariffs from Canada and Mexico, if they're sustained, would wipe out billions in industry profits and hurt American jobs too. The CEO of Ford, saying that out loud. About his own president's policy. The media narrative has been, Canada is protecting its workers. That's true, but the full story is, Canada restructured the tariff system so that the big three U.S. automakers now have a financial reason to keep investing here. The shield isn't just defensive, it's a leash, and Ford, GM, and Stellantis are wearing it, whether they've said so publicly or not. So where does this go from here? Two scenarios. And the timeline is specific. The CU-SEME review, the Canada-US-Mexico trade agreement, horizon mid-2026. This is the most important trade negotiation on Canada's calendar. Mark Carney's government, which won a majority mandate on April 14th, enters those talks with something Trump didn't expect Canada to have: leverage. Scenario A. Best case. By July 2026, Carney's team uses the automakers who stayed in Canada as proof the strategy worked. The 6-month exemptions get renewed and deepened. Manufacturing in Windsor, Oshawa, and Ingersoll stabilizes. The 500 workers still waiting in Ingersoll get called back. Canada emerges from this with a more resilient economy and a trade relationship that has been stress-tested and survived. The $10 billion lay dollar becomes a template. Canada wins not by fighting the Americans, but by making it too expensive for them to fight us. Scenario B. Worst case. The talks collapse. Trump follows through on threatened 100% tariffs on Canadian pharmaceuticals. Manufacturers who borrowed from the Let-El to survive 2025 now face loans coming due without enough revenue to cover them. The exemptions expire before companies can fully replace U.S. supply chains. The 23,000 auto job losses become 40,000. The $1,900 annual hit per Canadian deepens past $3,000 as inflation compounds. Ontario's manufacturing corridor, Windsor, Hamilton, Oshawa, Ingersoll, enters a contraction that takes a decade to climb out of. The difference between those two outcomes is being decided in rooms right now. Rooms that most of us will never see. Here's what I want you to sit with. Canada quietly built a $10 billion financial firewall and a legal mechanism that flipped the pressure back onto the most powerful auto companies in the world. And most Canadians have no idea it exists. The workers who came back to Kami in October came back to half a plant. They're grateful for the job, They don't know that the only reason they still have it is because some bureaucrat in Ottawa buried a conditional clause in a tariff exemption that made it more expensive for GM to abandon them than to keep them. We didn't fold. We didn't beg. We built a trap. But it's temporary. The loans come due, the exemptions expire, and the guy back on the line in Ingersoll, working next to 40% fewer co-workers than he used to, is one more executive order away from going home again. We bought ourselves time. What happens with that time is the only question that matters now. This video presents publicly available information for educational purposes only. Dollar Rewind is an AI-assisted production. All statistics are sourced and linked in the description. This is not financial or legal advice.